Kia ora tātou, nei mahara mai ki te komiti nei o te wai me te whenua, ka tīmata te hui nei a Councillor Kai.
Ora, whakatakara hau ki te uru, whakatakara hau ki te tonga, ki mā kina kina ki uta, ki mā taratara ki kai. Mihi aki ana, te atapura, hei tū, hei hoka, hei hahu, ki hei māua.
Tēnā koe, Councillor Karakia, ki te nei kuine, thank you for the Karakia that opened up. Welcome to the Water and Land Committee. It's good to see you today. It's our first one for 2024. We're looking forward to it, and we won't be trying to break Ian's speed record today. Apologies, we have apologies from Councillor East and Councillor Bunknell. We have also just apologies from Councillor Burns. I started to play up and he's gone home. Hopefully he'll be online later. We have Councillor Ward online, and hopefully Councillor DJ will be online later as well. And lateness for Councillor Karakia. Are there any conflicts of interest? Two items on today's agenda. No conflicts of interest. We have no public forums today. We have no deputations either, and no petitions have been presented. Is there any extraordinary or urgent business? None received. That's right. And there are no notices of motion. Good. Moving on to the agenda item 7.1, the unconfirmed minutes of the 29th November 2023 hui. And these were updated and they're in your pack. Are there any matters of accuracy related to the minutes of the meeting on the 29th? Oh, all right, Councillor DJ just come online. What? Oh. No? Oh. As there is, we'll have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Kai, seconder, Chair Scott. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? None. Carried. Shoulder. Haere tonu, 8.1, the March Resolution Status Report. That's on page 54, and I'll hand over to Jim. Dave.
Kia ora, Chair. If I take this apologies. Delighted to report that these are all green despite one appearing orange, and I'll just explain that a little bit. So I'll just go quickly to page 59 of the agenda, and you'll see that there are two items there, 8.2 drinking water nitrate testing, and the item that is in orange there should be marked as green, as was reported to the last meeting, and that's my mistake. I haven't followed through to tick it off yet, but the staff have contacted the territorial authorities, Te Manaora and zone committees about running private well testing events. The territorial authorities in Te Manaora said they were happy to contribute, but they didn't particularly want to initiate it. It has been put back to zone committees if they wish to run those events, and we will support them accordingly if they do. So that item is ticked off, and then the CWMS Fish Screen Working Group. Just to note that it is complete as the resolutions are there, but you'll note in your agenda in the minutes from the last meeting that there was a secretarial note on a workshop to be run early this year. Now that has not progressed, but it is intending to progress. And the reason it hasn't is that we're still working through next year's work program, which is what this is really about, next year's work program. With respect, and we're working through next year's work program with respect to the LTP funding and what's coming through and thinking about it. So we are intending to do this. It won't be early in the year, it's more likely to be in the middle of the year, but we are intending to do this.
Clarify, when you talk about next year's work, you mean as in financial year, so this is from July, August?
Correct, yes, I was talking about financial year, so from July. Yes.
Sure. Any points of clarification, any questions, clarification for Tim? None? All right, thank you, Tim, for the report. The recommendation is on page 54, it's also on the screen as well, that the Water and Land Committee notes the status of the previous resolution provided in the Water and Land Committee resolution dated 4/4. Do I have a mover? Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Southworth. For those in favour, say aye. Aye, any against? None, carried. Well done. Moving on to item 8.2, which is the work program report, and I'll hand over to Dr. Nicole.
There it is. Sorry. Kanaka, so I recommend that the Q2 paper for the work program report is received by this committee. This report covers the time period 1st of October to 31st of December 2023. The attachment 8.2.1 in the back was provided to the Audit Finance Risk Committee on the 21st of February. There's been no changes to that detail there. So I'll take the paper as read, but noting that all of the levels of service and key initiatives were on track at this stage, including level of service 2.1B, which is the implement the Mātauranga Māori monitoring program. So that had previously been at risk, but is now on track. And the next Q3 update, so that's covering the period 1st of January to 31st of March, will be brought to the Water and Land Committee on the 8th of May.
Good on Nicole, thanks for that. Is there any questions or clarification? Councillor Eads.
Thank you. Just page 66 at the bottom of the page, on the item covering implementation of the National Freshwater Farm Plan regulations. There's a next steps box there, which talks about development of a prototype catchment complex, challenges and values. Is that being done, or is it in the process of doing that?
So those comments there were written from the standpoint of end of Q2, and so they were, from end of December, just looking forward at that stage, is where those comments came through.
Yeah, I'll just extend on that a little bit. The freshwater farm plan work is just with the shifting messages and things out of central government. We know that there's some pieces of work that are on hold. So, for example, you might recall the freshwater farm plans for Canterbury were due to be in part of an order of council that said they would go live on the 1st of July 2025. And from that date, the regulations as they were written was farmers would have had 18 months to become certified. That whole order of council process, etc., is currently paused, so it's not recorded in an order of council and going through Cabinet. So there's a wait and see aspect to this. So staff are reflecting on that as we look at still regulations are in regulation in freshwater farm plans in place, but there's a degree of uncertainty around timing for what that means here in Canterbury, but actually throughout other regional places.
Very good. Anything else?
Related to that, so basically that prototype idea is just on pause because that's the freshwater farm plan is not made.
Staff are still exploring and doing work internally to look at what do we stand one up to see what it could look like and how far would we go, but we're not out engaging with our community around it.
That's what I was meaning. It's kind of working on a prototype just if it is accurate. Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Karakia. Tēnā kōrua. Can I go to page 67 and Ōki Wharekai? Because I went on a field trip, which was quite enlightening, earlier on in the year. Actually went up to Ōki Wharekai, met the contractor, and yeah, the interesting thing, okay, it's on track, but so there's no other update here. I mean, we're talking March 2024.
Kia ora. Actually, we've just communicated, there's a communication went out to all the members of the working group that next week the draft plan will be shared to the working group and a hui to come together around that draft plan at the end of next week. So it's alive. We're hoping to finish by to have a draft plan in place by March, end of March. So Environment Canterbury staff have seen it and given initial feedback. It's now going forward to the working group members. That includes the farmers of the 4 farms up there, and we'll come together around that. So it's still on track. Yeah.
Supplementary question. Mana whenua are also involved in this process. And what's the update at this stage with mana whenua?
So one of there's sorry, I'm thinking it's 6 goals areas, one of which relate to Whakakapi Valley, and there's been work to capture those from the support from Whakatau with the 3 runaka around capturing those values to put into that report, that plan as well. So it's all part of the process, and we're working very closely on it.
Just confirm, I mean, Adolf Whenua, I mean, the 3 runaka are an integral part of the working group anyway. And Carl Russell he wasn't the chair of it, no, he's not instigated anyway. Yeah. Got a good thank you for that. Councillor McKenzie.
Well, just while we're on the Ashburton Lakes, on that same field trip, and Phil Everest has since made a report to the Ashburton Zone Committee. And one of the interesting things is that they're doing with some additional intensive monitoring of various water bodies and lakes, and they're identifying when there's a large population of birds on the lakes, high spikes and E. coli they're monitoring for. What's interesting, and this is probably a question for you, Tim, is that they're not getting an associated spike in nutrients, but presumably the nutrients are going somewhere. So is it because the bird shit is insoluble and just sinks to the bottom of the lake and creates a problem later on in its life, or is it there are anomalies there, and you may not be able to answer this question now, but it'd be interesting to know what is going to happen to that level of nutrients. And just for background, when Nook and Craig and whoever else was up there, we saw over 1,000 birds on Lake Denny, which is a relatively small lake, and yet the water quality coming out of Denny was pretty good, but it wasn't showing the effects of this that was in the coal spike.
Look, I won't go into great detail on it, and I'm not an absolute expert on it, but you're quite right that you would expect to see an E. coli spike if there are a significant number of birds on a lake, and that is what the results are showing. In terms of the nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus certainly gets bound up pretty quickly, and gets released in different ways to do with the oxygen content of the lake. Nitrogen, there will be nitrogen present. All the studies have shown that it's not a significant adder of nitrogen into these lakes. It could, it does add some, but it's not a huge amount. But it will come through with time. You won't necessarily see a spike just because there are a lot just there straight away. I just wanted to clarify one issue, Councillor Karakia, you mentioned about meeting the contractor when we were up there. It's a different contractor. That was Phil Everest is working for the catchment group, whereas it's somebody who's different who's working on the integrated plan.
Kia ora, Councillor McKenzie, for that, question. Councillor Bourne.
Yeah, just related to Whakakapi as well. Yeah, and it was a good field trip, so really great to be up there. Obviously had a good sit down with the landowners up there and understood, tried to understand some of the changes over the last sort of 20, 30 years and how things have been up there. And there are some changes that have happened. And one thing I'm interested in is, I know nobody here is about the authorisations as well. Is there an update on how they go?
Thank you. Through the chair. So we've got Bianca Sullivan who's working with us through leading the consent review and progression of consents process. So you may recall that there are 2 farms that had a farming land use consent that we are undertaking a review on, and then there are 2 farms that have applications in process to progress. So there's slightly different processes, but we're trying to work collectively to move those through. So that works. There's been several meetings with the landowners around the process, the expectation, what draft consent. But it's in a process through.
Just on the mud on your multi, thanks for raising that. So is there another update? Like, we might know more about that. It's great that it's back on track. Through you, Chair. Yes, there will be an update coming to the next committee meeting. We were trying to get it into this agenda. We just didn't quite line it up in time. So there will definitely be an update coming to the next meeting in May. I'll just make a quick comment on that, as that I think it is a significant thing that we've moved from the red to the green, and I guess just I was going to say speaking personally, but from the organisational point of view, it's really I'm really pleased to see this, particularly because it is kind of reoriented what we're doing in this space, and it is really having it driven from the Rūnaka needs, rather than something that we're coming in and saying, here's a framework, please use this. It's more, what is it that you would like to, that needs doing in your space, and that's the change that's happened. That's just why it took a little bit longer than we hoped to get it going, but it is really starting to move now. And we're looking forward to having more fortune.
Yeah, I was interested in levels of service 10 and 11. Just a bit more information on those, because it is such high level, and they think definitely give interest. So there's the review and report on the effectiveness of 2 campaigns being undertaken to improve landowners' needs and understanding. So I'm wondering which 2 campaigns is that focusing on, and it mentions report at the end of reporting back at the end of the year, and again it's that financial end of the year, so we'll hear at the end of June, not the end of the calendar year on that one.
That level of service, Tiana is referring, the 2 campaigns is the nitrogen NCAP campaign and the intensive winter grazing campaign. And yes, at the end of the year they put together a report, normally to senior leaders within ECAM. Doesn't always come to this committee, but often there's been something separate taken to this committee. So it just really, is a reflection on what's in there, just whether it then comes onto here. And
Oh, well, just to say on that one as well, I mean, this particular agenda is very sparse, and it would be nice to have some information like this. There is actually, I'm sure, given that this is one of our key areas of work, it's incredibly good, and it would be lovely to, maybe get a bit more information on some of these things, even if it's not. It's nice to know a bit more about what we're doing.
I can give a bit of detail that we've been sort of asked to
have a layer of consistency around the amount of information we're reporting on each quarter across all of the portfolios, and some of that work has come through the direction from the Audit Risk Finance Committee. So that's why you probably have noticed a slight lightening of detail compared to what you might have got quarter 4 last year. So that is from that direction that slight lightening within there has occurred.
Level of service 11, same again really, you've mentioned programs, catchment-based partnership projects. I'm assuming that Pathway would be one of those maybe, or is it others? What are we looking at with that one?
It's the work of David Murphy and his team with the Whakatau program. Does it make sense?
Sorry, can you talk about order or yeah, and
Sorry, I'll come in. There are 2 programs in particular. There's Whakakapi, so Whakakapi, and the Whakakapi Te Waihora. Both of those programs can come up to that as joint.
Cheers, Scott. Thank you. Tim, just for you, the level of intensity around O2 Wharekai from outer agencies was pretty high when we started this process. Given that we've now got a change of government, are they still engaged like as they were, like LINZ and DOC? I get the feeling that LINZ is sort of dropping away from the mooring of it.
I'll ask Judith to comment in terms of the working group, but I would just comment in a wider sense of, for example, Craig Harris is still involved and we have regular meetings. We just haven't had one for about since Christmas, but I've got one set up for, I think it's next week or the week after, involving all of those agencies, and part of that is to just pull a little bit harder on, and it is, I won't name, it is particularly on, it is on all of the agencies to keep them involved, closely involved.
I would note that I have an issue with LINZ at the moment, and it's been going on for a long time actually. And they just asked me in a recent request, am I following the correct RMA process? Now, coming from LINZ, that's pretty rich. I would ask you, is there an opportunity that when Craig Harris is here, that I get the opportunity to talk, because I've said to him personally that they need to step forward into the space a bit better than they are. And that's not only here in Open Whakakai, but it's also in Te Mohi. You know, they're not playing the game the way they should, and it disappoints me.
We're taking Chair Scott, and I'm sure we will find a way. Is there anyone else? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. My just continuing on this Open Whakakai item on page 67, and the production of the integrated catchment management plan. This area is defined in our regional policy statement as an area of outstanding natural landscape, and of course that involves not only the farmers and their land, but also the interagency land as well. So it's the whole upper catchment for sure. Are the matters related to maintaining the landscape quality to maintain its outstanding natural landscape values? Is that something that's being produced as part of this integrated catchment management?
You may recall that there was a request from this committee to the working group, which we carried through around this question, around the status of it as an outstanding natural landscape. And the working group discussed that aspect about what is the purpose of the integrated plan they were developing, because this isn't Environment Canterbury's integrated plan, it's a multi-agency approach, and with strong landowners, was to develop a plan that was was non-statutory in nature and was not inconsistent with any statutory provisions that it, or statuses that included, be that related to the statutory acknowledgement areas associated with Ngā Tahu, but also the provisions within district plans around that outstanding landscape. So the goals, the work to date developed a really strong framework around the vision, goals and objectives to not be inconsistent with that, but doesn't dive into the detail of would we expect a review of West Wetlands District Plan to align stronger or lesser with landscape values. It hasn't gone to that level of detail around actions, if you like, at this stage. But it's identified a series of 6 goals and a range of objectives to deliver to those outcomes. So it's inherent within it, but it's not at that level of detail.
Yeah, I suppose it wasn't really expecting it to be a review of those values. It's just a review, well, an assessment of those values within the catchment plan to say, well, these are the values that created the outstanding natural landscape. If we do A, B, C in the integrated plan, how does it affect those values? Are we losing more? Are we potentially improving the situation that it is now? It not only includes the lakes themselves, but all the surrounding landscape. So I can't see why you would do an integrated catchment management plan without considering those values.
The working group's been really clear of the connectedness between one action and others. So you could do lots of actions to improve water quality and diminish other areas at the same time, and we don't want that. So that consideration of balance is part of this process. But there isn't a specific goal in the plan around landscape. What I'm trying to be specific, yeah.
Gee, I suppose I'm just thinking that, are we in breach of our responsibilities under a resource, under a regional policy statement in terms of identifying that within our regional policy statement and the management of that landscape? That's my question. It doesn't have to be answered now, but I think I just.
We'll take your point of view, Councillor Edge. The SIM draft hasn't come out yet. We weren't privy to the terms, or we weren't privy to the terms of reference. It came from the working group. The working group drove this. Judith, is there something else on that?
Look, the working group are really strong that at the moment they're giving effect to our policy statement is within the mandate of the district council through their district plan. So that's where they felt that needed to be sitting from who's responsible, etc. So I guess there's always an opportunity going forward about how you do that. It's a non-statutory document by nature, so it doesn't preclude anything. It's not trying to give effect to the statute, but it is trying to acknowledge that there are those aspects of the guardrails and
Just a comment on that, Councillor McKenzie?
Just a question really for Judith. My understanding is there is no threat to the landscape values. Landscape values actually have to become an issue because nobody sees that that's a threat. Would you support that view?
the conversation from the working group members about what are the things that we need to do differently to protect and give effect to the vision for Karakia haven't identified landscape particularly is not an easy. So I guess that does not mean that as we go out with this draft plan and start connecting with other people and groups that have an interest in this, the Otu Karakia Basin and its environment. For example, the hut holders, we talked about that at the meeting, and the zone committee and forest and bird, etc., that other things won't come through. That's why it's called a draft plan, because as we use this as an engagement tool to go out and it's beyond the current working group to go, here's what we've set a framework in place, some visions, some goals, some objectives. Now there's some actions to undertake. Some of those groups will have a role to play in delivering those actions to get the outcomes. I'm also highlighting that this is the draft plan is intentionally drafted to be then a vehicle of engagement going forward. Some of those other people today or groups that haven't been involved.
And Councillor, we'll take that. You've raised the point here. We've heard it loud and clear. about and natural landscape, and we will, and that will kind of, in the draft, I mean, Judith has heard it, there's an opportunity to speak to the contractor as well, and then as it's draft, and we have an opportunity to make sure that we do kind of, as you said, meet our requirements on the output. Okay?
Yes, thank you. The standing of the upstanding is a regional council, not a territorial authority. Precisely, it's an upper level document. But what I'm interested in too now, which is the catchment management plan. What are the various geophysical layers that have been considered within the catchment management plan that have led to certain decisions being made? So that's something that I certainly would be interested in seeing.
Once the draft comes, went through the draft, as I said, it was the working group, and there was a lot of different organisations on that working group. It's not particularly run by environmental by itself. We've got a district council as well, already mentioned. So that'll give us an opportunity having the draft, and then we can make comments on it. So thank you, Councillor Reeves. Anything else on 8.2? No, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Judith. You may leave the table. Recommendation is on page 60 of the agenda. It reads, received the work program report for quarter 2, 2023-24 for the land and for the water and land portfolio. Do I have a mover? Councillor Egg, seconder. Councillor Kai. All those in favour can say aye. Aye, any against? None. Carried. Order. Moving on to 8.3, and I'm going to bring Eli and David to the table. Yeah. And Cam. We'll allow you, Cam. And David, you introduce the paper.
Good afternoon, councillors. This Kaitiakitanga Mahinga Kai program update. It's really good to bring this to the committee this afternoon. A little bit of background as to where this program of work came from. So through the CWMS, for those councillors familiar with that, there were a number of targets set around Kaitiakitanga, and the way in which those, and the first sort of tranche of the CWMS, the first way that they were to be delivered on was largely through a program referred to as immediate steps. There was a broad assumption that a lot of the immediate steps projects would ultimately deliver on Mahinga Kai outcomes. When the CWMS underwent its review about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, one of the review findings was on looking across those projects and the feedback from Papatapurunanga. The feedback was that we weren't making the expected progress around improving outcomes for Mahinga Kai. So there was a specific recommendation in the sense of the revised targets back to the Mayoral Forum to have something more specific that focused specifically on Mahinga Kai and realising those outcomes for Papatapurunanga. So the target in that was set around having 5 projects per Papatapurunanga, so effectively 50 projects across the region by 2025, and then there was a further target for 2030. So in that reset of the CWMS, that was fed into the council's last long-term plan, and particularly under the Healthy Waterways actions, under the land and water section of the LTP, and to get that program of work underway. As per the paper, we've taken a partnership approach, and EDI was employed and brought in specifically as part of the Tuia team to engage with Whakatau Runanga in both the design, the sort of co-design, but also the development of each of the initiatives, and really to provide some capacity and support to the Runanga to actually realise and bring the projects to fruition. So we've been doing that, and I guess often there's a reflection of or a question around capability and capacity, and one of the I think the important indicators in our program of work over the last 3 years is in the early stages of the program. Whakatau Runanga were quite reliant on EDI and the team here and getting those and running the projects, but over time we've seen greater pickup and leadership by the Runanga themselves to implement and lead the projects on the ground. Unless anyone would have anything else you want to add?
Just tēnā tātou. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Is that in year 1 and 2 we completed 23 projects. Currently we have 9 projects underway. We are waiting on an expression of interest from Mai Tuahindiri. We've identified 31 sites, and that all projects contribute towards for their work type is restoration, protection, or monitoring, and that's for capability building for the Runanga members, whānau, to be within those 3 spaces, and that these projects are Runanga led.
Good quarter. They get into the presentation. Oh boy. So just open up for clarification. Councillor Robinson, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. Councillor Karakia.
No, order. Can I just, thanks for the paper. Yeah, and you've highlighted it, EDI around some of the highlights. I just wondered, so I'm just, with the jobs for nature, and I know this is not it, but did some of this actually, because I'm looking at Rapaki Tipu Ngahere, did some of that, was that particular program actually supported by some of the work that was done here?
Yes, there were 3 Runanga that had job for nature projects, big projects, and will support some aspect of that. And if I could just add, some of those, of course, this program of work was the jobs for nature was sort of materialising post-COVID or enduring, well, post-COVID, the initiatives of government. So, these 2 things did come together in the sense of leveraging the opportunities out of jobs for nature. For some of the projects, even though the program started in 2021-22, some of the projects were already being incubated and the thinking was already occurring. So some of that is materialised in the project for Environment Canterbury, and some of it was then, you might say, put on steroids because of jobs for nature, and they were able to access a greater extent of funding.
So, and I told you exactly, what that stance was, because that's kotahi tata, motion. Now that with the Gala things come down on the jobs for nature, and there is a real concern about all of that work that's been done, And so what happens to it now? And so looking at the next steps of this, would you turn it around and kind of look at some of that? Would you continue to support, you know, the aftermath of the Jobs for Nature work?
Certainly the projects and the ongoing commitment that we have under the CWS targets will contribute to that. Whether it can be at the scale that Jobs for Nature has been really the question, because the levels of funding made available through Jobs for Nature, and remember that wasn't just about the outcome, just wasn't about the environment. It was basically keeping employment levels low, unemployment levels low. So that the outcome was slightly different in the sense of, you know, Environment Canterbury is not in the business of dealing with the labour market and unemployment, but we do have an outcome in the sense of the environmental gains that have been achieved through Jobs for Nature. And so how we can work, and we've continued to have these conversations with Runanga about how can we, you know, that it doesn't just die off, that we can retain some level of momentum in working with the Runanga.
Yes, supplement. Yeah, look, I wasn't actually at all thinking that, you know, that you would actually operate within that huge framework of Jobs for Nature. What I was just basically suggesting is that it's actually about sustaining, you know, what is actually there now. I mean, there are other, I'm sure there's other programs that they're looking at. I mean, for instance, Arowhenua have actually started their own kind of succession program for this. There's some of the other ones haven't actually. And so all I'm saying is that maybe a thought there to actually just assist to sustain what they've got at the moment.
Absolutely, and I think what we've been also building off is, and you know, if we use Arowhenua as an example, they've built a skilled labour force that not only can deliver on programs and initiatives like this, they also have a valuable and useful service that we can, you know, they can fit in and tender into our processes for work that Environment Canterbury is doing across the region and in their takiwā. So this has there are multiple opportunities that are coming out of the increased capacity and capability at Runanga from Jobs for Nature, which is, yes, doing environmental projects, but also providing goods and services to the council.
I've been granted another supplementary. Can I, with the Kaikoura program, so, and I see that it's a Huruna Improvement Project, yep, and focusing on training and pest control. Is that actually part of training, so that training our whānau from Kaikoura to assist them to become part of the procurement program for ECAN?
Yes, that's 10 whānau members from Rawiri's team, with training them.
We're looking forward to actually seeing that when we go to Kaikoura in a couple of weeks' time. So, Councillor Koraki, moving on, Councillor Southwood.
Thank you. Yeah, just so the targets here, which I read as 50 sites, sorry, identified by 2025 and 100 by 2030. So, yes, firstly, are we on track for that? But also, just explain the identified. So, because I looked at this and thought 300,000 a year to be sorting out 50 sites actually isn't very much, particularly if you've got the ongoing cost of continuing to maintain them. So it's identified actually in literally that we've identified which ones we will do, but might have to get to some of those until like 2040 or beyond. That's my sort of first question.
I'll start and I can add in. When we went through the review of the CWS with the Whakatau working group, that wording was co-constructed with them, and sometimes depending on the capability and capacity of the runanga, identifying them in and of itself can be quite a large milestone. So it was recognising that the achievement of both identifying but then also delivering on, but not, I guess, framing the targets in a way that drove Whakatau runanga and forced them into a time frame that may have not worked for them. So it was about having something that set a sort of a clear expectation, but gave runanga the opportunity to work out what time frames worked for them. But it was also about making traction because they wanted to see more outcomes. So it was recognising those dynamics.
I'm going to take the supplementary as well, if that's all right. So on that, is now that there's been some work done, has identified quite a number of sites today, heading towards the 50, 100 to the next goal, but also you've got actual projects that have been implemented and some of those have perhaps been completed or at least have got to the point where they're now on a level of maintenance. So would it make sense now to actually maybe put some more concrete timeframes in place in terms of actually doing the project that might span out beyond the reason why I'm coming to that is because we're looking at LPP, 10 years worth of budget planning, and that 300,000 doesn't seem to me like it's enough to be developing and actually doing the project, not just identifying them. So, is there another piece of work to do here now, or is that being done in the background to actually knock out more detail in terms of delivering the project, not just identifying and making sure those budgets are in place for the 10 years that are in our long-term plan that we're just going out for consultation on?
To date, the sort of fiscal envelope that's been around this has, in the main, satisfied the expectations. We've been able to, across all of the projects happening at different sort of periods of time, or that fiscal envelope has been made to work, and haven't, as far as I know, been oversubscribed. The challenge is always, with all of the things that runanga have on their radars, is looking at what does that map look like for the next 5 or 10 years. That's some of the conversation that we're looking forward to our Raitahi councillors having with Whakatau runanga over the next few months when we go out about vision and aspirations, because some of this can actually be about, it's not just motherhood and apple pie visions, but actually what do they see as the areas to make change, practical change on the ground, and that will feed into our ability to improve and enhance programs like this.
Final one, so where I'm coming from really is that there is a sort of weeds. I don't know if there's pests in the animal sense as well that are a component of some of these projects, because there's quite a lot of these types of projects. There is then an ongoing cost, and as you bring in 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 projects, you've got your level of just keeping the quality of what you've achieved in the past. That budget keeps on rising, and you're then adding in more on top. So that's really where I'm sort of, is there mechanisms in place for budget in place to ensure that the ongoing maintenance and quality of those projects that are being done carries on, or does that go into different budget somewhere else, or how does that work?
Maybe I can cover that one. So a lot of the projects are part of bigger projects, and so a lot of maintenance work is done by the broader project. We might be applying, we might be funding seed supply, but they have a whole team and called maintenance work. So that's just looking at the current projects. That's 4 out of these 5 projects that need maintenance, and of 5 of them, 4 of them the delivery's being led by Unanga. So it's within their broader budget. The project that he can delivering on, which is the giant cook food project in Whenora. So we would be part of the ongoing project that's done. And just more detail about work. So I'll go back to some of the old projects, like this project that have reading done, and so it is about getting that ongoing reading within the camp up in place, which is sort of, that's all in progress.
Thank you for that. Explains how it interacts.
Moving on to Councillor East.
Thanks, Stu. I was a bit unclear about the finances, who's getting what, where are we at with budgets. There's no sort of budgetary information, progress information. Just on the top of page 69, item 7 there, talks about the 600,000 K for the project in the last long-term plan. And it looks to me like we're already through, we obviously would have year 1, 2 and 3 in our bond. Has all that money been spent, or will it be spent by the end of June? Presumably the budget ends at the
Yep, will be spent by the end of June. So year 1, each year we'll spend all of the budget for that year. And each year, so there's 10 of Unanga each year, we up to 3%. And only in the case where later in the year that's gone unspent, we reallocate that to a project with the funding. This year, every number has gone into about and that 30,000 is the 300,000, or is that? And then in a budget for this financial year, that's 24-25, is again 300,000. And you've got projects on page 70 to identify 240,000 allocated, and you've just got some other projects, 30,000 to finalise those. I think you answered my questions really. I think it probably would be good to hear maybe in discussion to see if next time we can have a bit more information about how, it's really good to see that, obviously the project's done, but just some financial information beside each one of those, another column, another couple of columns, I think would be good if you could perhaps note that
So in a sense, you are the chair of audit, finance and risk. So I take it you're coming from that angle, and similar to the jobs for nature and other things in the boom work that we've done, and we've been talked by the auditor that they want to see more of a breakdown. Is that where you kind of get going to?
Yes, I think the Jobs for Nature, the MEP had a fairly rigorous way of making sure that we kept track of our projects, and I think for the sake of transparency, both financially but also project, that we really do need to see those figures, especially when there seemed to have been page 69 there, two ways of the project being funded. One is a grant agreement, and the other one is a work program agreement. And it seems that everyone's now gone for a grant agreement. Well, it's just daylighting the fact that it's $10,000 for each Runanga, and the Runanga projects are agency. I just think it just needs.
Couple of point taken. You got supplementary to that. Supplementary caught up with.
The Jobs for Nature is $1.19 billion. We're talking about 300,000.
On the same issue. Yeah.
The more I've actually been listening to this, the more that I've just sort of clicked on to something that I've at the OCOP meeting that we had on Monday, we had an agenda. We had an application from other Penrith for $20,000 for maintenance of funding, which is just what I've been hearing in this space. And I'm just looking at their application. Unfortunately, we didn't give them the money because they didn't turn up. But when I read the application, it says that if you applied or received funding from ECAN or any other organisation, it says no. So I'm actually starting to, the more that I've listened to this, I'm just kind of, I don't understand where the pots of money are coming from for all of these things that have come out of Jobs for Nature, where they're going to go, who's responsible for what's the accountability, because if they're saying no at this, so I'm hearing that this money for this thing is going to that, then I'm actually quite confused. So because I don't want to see double discipline.
But don't you okay?
Without the specifics, I can't answer the question, but Whakatau Runanga are doing multiple projects across the Takiwa often. So whether their request to the zone committee was related to their Mahinga Kai projects, I don't know without the specifics of it.
They could have been, because they're on the Whakakapi as well. They've got their own rivers and things, so it could have been, for a specific project outside this one. But point taken. I mean, I'm sure there might be somewhere. I mean, if Edai knows, a breakdown of a bit more some of the projects that we might be able to supply. But in the meantime, anything else there?
They specifically are talking about Mahinga Kai biodiversity value. All the things that I've just heard being talked about. So what my point is that we need to just be very clear about the pots of money that we have, that we're giving out, so that we're not seeing some duplication of. Because I think we're going to come with a tsunami of problems. People need money to maintain what they've done under the Jobs for Nature. This is actually a live example on the table, I think, that we just need to be very clear about who's paying what, where the money's coming from, because otherwise we don't have accountability. That's all I'm saying.
So there could be, as I said, they've got multiple rivers, and they could have like 10 to 15 projects because they've got their own nursery now, and then look to Councillor Karakia already mentioned that they're kind of looking at ways of carrying that workforce on, and so they could have multiple projects in different areas, whereas they need 20 grand for one particular spot. But I take your point. What we probably do need is thinking about Councillor Paul and use the map. Just a red dot somewhere, and then maybe some other dots if there's other projects going on, just so we know where that kind of money, where things are going to. But that's the work we do in the future. But I take your point. Yeah.
Sorry, but just the point is, I mean, in some ways it's got profile.
I mean, the fact is that you're absolutely right, is that it could have been a number of things here, but we're specifically talking about this, and we're not sure yet, and it's just been answered. So, again, we got to jump through bloody hoops and barriers and all that sort of over them. Whereas, again, we have to have some faith in this thing. I mean, what they've reported, which they've aptly done, and then if you want to go and do all the rest of it, well, then that's another conversation. It's not here.
No, point taken. We're going to move on. But I said there's each rūnaka has got multiple things going on, multiple projects, and Edai probably knows that. I'm just saying, but for us, just so it'd be good to have because we always like maps, just in the sense we know where these projects are, and then where the other things are in CWMS, they can be overlaid on the top if it needs to be. But specifically, thank you, Edai, on those feedback. Councillor Edge, is anything supplementary to your supplementary?
Just want to be reassured that there's a comment in the minutes to ask for more in-depth financial information about these particular projects for the next meeting.
We have the discussion as well, and moving over to Councillor Mackenzie, lucky last.
Thank you. I've got two questions, I think, but depending on one depends a bit on the other. And what I'd really like to focus back on is when this project was first mooted in the last LTP, wasn't specifically at that stage a Runanga, was it a project that was designed around Runanga, or was it a project to deliver on Mahinga Kai outcomes? Because I seem to remember a discussion, Claire tells me we had that discussion in the previous iteration of the council, and I'm trying to stretch my memory, and I do remember a discussion around Mahinga Kai, employing Tomaticos to deliver on that, and working with farmers and landowners and various people to deliver on Mahinga Kai outcomes. Is this that project, which is now morphed into a specific Runanga delivery project, or have we got other projects running to deliver Mahinga Kai outcomes? And then as part of that, this question, when it goes to sort of the questions that Grant was asking, the $600,000 that was voted for this project in the last LPP, was it always intended that year 4, 5, and 6 and ongoing there would be $300,000 available for this project? That's the first question.
So in the last LTP, as per my intro, it was in the Healthy Waterways Actions program under Land and Water, and the subsection was under the Te Mana o Te Wai implementation, which was about implementing the Essential Freshwater National Direction in partnership with Whakatau Runanga to increase community engagement and awareness towards achieving Te Mana o Te Wai. And then there was a specific level of service around partnering with Whakatau Runanga. So these projects, albeit they came under the CWMS target review, and our LTP was nestled in that. So it was the CWMS, but coupled with Te Mana o Te Wai and the implementation of the national direction of the time. Because the CWMS target goes out to 2030 and sets the delivery of 100 Mahinga Kai projects by 2030, it was anticipated that the 300,000 would continue. I think, if I remember right, in the need to recut the clock in the last LTP, it was originally proposed that that be at 300,000 for each year, but it was cut back to the step ups to help meet the fiscal constraint of council at the time, but also recognising it was going to take us time to transition and do the work with Whakatau Runanga, so we didn't set the bar as high as, because we may not have met it in year one, so hence the staging.
So just to clarify, this was always intended to be a public Whakatau Runanga delivered project. Okay. So then the second question, because I think I had 4 originally, but 2 of the questions you answered the previous questions, Mr. Chair, which I thought you'd be very excited about. but the second question really is about levels of accountability. So have we, and I refer this to the fact that I know Cam and his team and other projects are very specific about making sure that the delivery is, held to the highest level of scrutiny to make sure that we are getting value for money and that the money isn't being spent on things it shouldn't be spent on. Have we defined? And when I read the different projects, they, I get that they are all vaguely related to the child delivery outcomes. But how are we? What definitions have we got around this project in terms of how we're holding the delivery to accountability? And Cam, I don't know whether Cam is better to answer this or not. I don't know this, but I do know that he's held some projects that had oversight and to a high level of scrutiny, and I just want to make sure that we have the same level of scrutiny for the outcomes within this project.
Can I just lead off on that one? Because you're right, we do apply scrutiny, obviously, to when we fund external work. The question is the level of scrutiny. The scrutiny is usually commensurate with the level of funding as well. And so, obviously, the more funding we put out, the more scrutiny we have. I'll let Edo talk to what evaluation we put on this, but that's usually the approach we take. So, if something's multi-million dollars, we'll be a very, very high level of scrutiny. Versus something with 10,000, 15, we will be scrutiny, but it's usually not as high as
so when we deliver, when we can deliver the project, we have all of that information in part of our report. When we give a grant to public Kaitiakitanga, we put within the grant, within that contract, that they are contractually obligated to provide a report on the work, and so at the end of each financial year of that project, when that project is finally completed, we request that report as the process.
Got it. So just on that, Edo, so deliverables, you keep an eye on deliverables, and you have a, as you said, things to sign off that the Runanga report back on, and then it goes back to yourself and the team. Yep. Oh boy.
Mention, if I may, just to clarify what it is I'm asking for, and it's not necessarily specific to this project, because I accept that there are different levels of scrutiny. I understand that. For me, I guess I have a view that every dollar we spend on behalf of our lenders, they want to see the same level of accountability. But and that's naive to think that way. But I guess it would be interesting that when we do get reports, and this isn't just specific to this project, but with all our projects, it'd be nice to get some view as to the investment we've made and the outcomes when we get these reports, and whether you can do that in dollar terms or just outputs, that would be useful, because I think we need to be doing that across the board in a lot of our projects.
Ian, you're probably talking about it like we do LTP and then the biodiversity percentages. A lot of money comes in and out. So you're saying across, that's a lot of reporting. I mean, what is it, just a tick? It's something we'll take away, but I mean,
it would be sort of grading, what we think of the outcomes for the dollar spent, and it's not down to the finest, it's not down to the last 10 cents. It's saying, we've got 4 categories, A, B, C, D, for example. We think this project's delivering at an A level, and other projects may be delivering at a D level. And it's a
point taken. Something to take away. Sure.
Could I just add also from a macro, because obviously this hangs off an outcome in the CWS, and actually the outcome has come through into the new 3 core services and the impact framework, and that's about the outcome of Mahinga Kai is improving, and we've got work underway, and I understand it's on the agenda for the next land and water to bring back the mātauranga work that we're doing around mātauranga Māori,
which working with Runanga around how we're monitoring those Mahinga Kai outcomes using Mātauranga Māori and building that into, so we can actually report, have we met the outcome in the macro sense of is Mahinga Kai, has it improved? Some of which maybe through bespoke projects such as this, others maybe in the grander scheme of whakaora te waipura or whakaora whakaraupo, which are on much bigger scale. So, as well as other private landowners, because it's the monitoring, cultural monitoring is not just bespoke to things Runanga have done, it's in the context of a catchment or a whole environment.
Otherwise, David, thanks for that clarification. Councillor McCoy. Oh, no,
I'm happy to move it.
you don't think, Councillor Twiggs? No, we haven't put it up. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't. Just let me finish. I'm in control here. Thank you, Eli, David, Ken. Thank you for coming to the table. We'll move on to the recommendation on page 68 that the Water and Land Committee received the Kaitiakitanga Mahinga Kai initiatives update. Mover, Councillor Karakia. No, that's not the process. Councillor Karakia, seconder. Councillor Twiggs. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? None. Carried. Shoulder.
Point of order, Chair. Didn't have discussion.
My apologies. Too far. Next meeting, 8th of May. As I said, the Mātauranga Māori will be coming to that. And I'll hand over to Councillor Mackay to close up in Karakia.
Sure. Kia hora, te maunga, te whakapapa, panama, te nauana. Te huarahi mā tātou, ki te ranganei, talaha tātou, talaha mai. Tātou e tātou tātou, hui e tātou.
Kia ora. Thank you for that, Claire.